From Bitcoin, blockchain or distributed ledger technology to cryptocurrencies, tokens and initial coin offerings, it seems everyone involved has something to say, but can you really trust their advice? One man's had enough of weasel words and charlatans and is ready to give you impartial, independent analysis. With digestible blockchain bites, ICO analysis and need-to-know news on cryptocurrencies, author, speaker, transparency and clarity advocate and award-winning software innovator Barry James brings you Radio ICO.
And it's Barry James again for ICO Radio, the Blockchain Bites program, and I'm really pleased to have with me Michael Hirn of Rlay. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
It's okay. So would you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, but also we'll move on then to talk about Rlay and what that is.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I'm not that old, so I will start very early. I started programming when I was 12, and then had a software service company when I was still in high school that I coded, and eventually the machine learning stuff came around, and we were really interested in building something for companies. And so we developed a pretty popular machine learning framework called Leaf, got some funding, moved to Berlin.
Leaf as in leaf on the tree?
Yeah, exactly. So
okay.
The company was called Autumn, and that's why, machine
Autumn
learning.
Leaf, yeah.
But unfortunately it doesn't work out because Google released TensorFlow a couple months later, and we had a really hard time competing and no way succeeding, or winning that game. And then I joined Sunstone Capital, which is a European venture capital firm, and I worked very closely with Max Niederhofer, who we really like, and we were working on a model to predict the success of early stage startups. Which that model I later in last year I used to rate tokens. I wanted to use that to sort of build a decentralized rating firm.
Yeah.
And that's how I got into the blockchain space. And that is also how I came across the Oracle problem, the external data problem, and all the stuff that we try to solve with Rlay.
Okay, so great introduction. So we're going to talk about Rlay and the Oracle problem. So just for those who don't know what that is, would you just outline that for them, please?
I would love to. So I think the Oracle problem is actually deep down a very philosophical problem of how can we be sure that we know something to be true? Or, how can we know anything? Or how can I know that you tell me the truth whenever you tell me something? And that is the question behind the Oracle problem. So if some person says something about the real world, for example, I am this and this person, and I have this and this product that I want to sell you, this information needs to be verified before we do any transaction with that information, because what otherwise happens is that you believe something to be true, do the transaction, send money or something, and then you can't go back anymore, right? The money is gone, you did it based on wrong information. So you want to be really sure that if your smart contract runs on anything, if it has input that is information about the real world, that this is true and verified and couldn't be changed by anyone, so that you don't have to trust anyone this is actually correct. And that is a big problem, on top of with the storage problem in the blockchain space, or the computation problem. I think it prevents a lot of DApps at the moment from actually, going sort of the next step and become more user-friendly.
So in essence, it's the problem of the data connection, a reliable data connection to the real world from the blockchain. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Okay. So tell us about Rlay. What is it, and how does it? What problem does it solve exactly?
Yeah. So when we wanted to do the decentralized rating firm in the beginning, we had the problem that we needed the information that came from the startups who wanted the rating from us to be verified, so that they weren't lying, were generating ratings on wrong information. And we tried the solutions that were out there, which is oracles that connect to databases or prediction markets, and none of that really worked for us, mostly for three reasons. So the first one is the available data that you have. Sometimes it just wasn't possible that you get any information, or the solution, Oracle or prediction market, didn't allow for someone to verify that they had 3 team members or something like that. So that's the expressibility problem. The other one is the cost of verifying the information. So on like prediction markets, for example, it usually takes like days or even weeks, and it's like super slow just for one piece of information, super costly because it requires humans to come together and think about it and whatnot. And lastly, the security problem. So all of them are, sort of like attackable, not in the easier attackable as like a blockchain is attackable with the 51% attack or something.
Yeah.
And those three problems those three things is what we try to tackle and reinvent so that actually, we have a solution for the blockchain space that is actually usable.
Okay, so can you tell us a bit about how that works and how, or is it too technical?
It is a little bit technical, but I think we can,
Yeah, please do.
Express it in easy words. So the first thing that we do different is we use our incentive function to incentivize people to send information to us. Not like oracles where we try to connect to our databases, but those people, send the information to Rlay, to the network, in sort of like a transaction, which is what they use the Rlay token for. And that information may come from their brain, may come from some database, from the internet, wherever. We don't really care how they get it there. They just send it to us, and we will reward them with Rlay tokens at every block, based on that information being true and that information being relevant to the system. That is the first big step. And the second one is that we're not using English, for example. Like the questions in Augur, for example, are on English. And it's really hard for machines to do anything with like English sentences. So we use it's called a resource description framework. It's a very essentially a way that allows machines to understand what you are, what you're talking about. So if I say Michael's fun of Rlay, that will be expressible, and even in 1,000 years from now, every machine can understand what that means and how does it relate to if I say the sky is green, for example. And that allows us to do something with the information now. And that is finally then the last part. We introduce a proof called proof of coherence that works a little bit like the way a crossword puzzle works. So in a crossword puzzle, right, if you want to know if an entry is correct, you check how well it coheres with all the other entries in the crossword puzzle. And if we see that it coheres all perfectly, then we're justified that the entry was correct. If there's no other entries yet, then we're like not really justified. It could be right, could also be wrong. And if something doesn't add up, then we know that some entry was wrong. And that is exactly what we do with proof of coherence. So anyone can download the client, run proof of coherence on their machine without having to know who Michael is, what Rlay is, and so on, and kind of computationally verified is, bringing down the cost of validating like these statements a lot. And all that in the end leads to the big thing. As more and more information gets onto the Rlay network, it becomes easier and more justified that the statements are better validated than before, whereas that's not true for oracles or prediction markets, where even if you've answered 1 million questions correct, the next question is still equally hard to answer and not really more justified to be true. And yeah, that is the big difference.
Okay, so just to clarify, the RDF thing, the research description framework, is this way of codifying very exactly. How does that relate to someone out there who's going to tell you something? How do they interact with that? Do you decode the English, the English they give you, or what?
Yeah, so that is a really good question, right? So first off, RDF was developed like roughly 20 years ago by the World Web Consortium, and is by now a pretty standard technology. And the way that you would use that is like you as an end user, you don't know really that you're using RDF in the background. Usually, you would interact with an application. For example, Crunchbase, right? If you go to Crunchbase and type in that you're the founder of this company or something, you don't know what
so it's
they use in the background.
So it's encoding that data that's acquired by just whatever way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's also obviously natural language processing, which helps you, if you write something in English, to transform that into RDF statements and so on.
Okay. So I think that's nice and clear. And in terms of use cases, it's clearly got potentially very wide applications, but just give us a few ideas of the kind of maybe typical use cases that you can see already.
Yeah. So I'm still very passionate about the project that I wanted to, why we started this in the first place. We saw a lot of, unvalidated claims about token projects or tokens in general that weren't really true and that I think harm the environment in general. So you could imagine having a decentralized Crunchbase where you have information about all the projects, and those information are verified to be true, because in Crunchbase you can post anything, like nothing there is true, nor does anyone have an incentive in the first place to fill it out, really. And then once you have that, it's super easy to actually compute ratings or rankings over like all the crypto projects and what is like the least likely to default in the next 24 months or something like that. And then you get really interesting rankings that you can sort of like trust instead of like what you have today, because there's no repercussions if you lie.
Okay, that's really interesting. Well, I have got one heck of a challenge for you. We'll talk about token intelligence a bit later on after the interview, because I think I don't want to bore the listeners. So just as we kind of round out the interview, though, what do you want people to do? Because really important point. You're not running an ICO. Right.
Yeah.
So firstly, why are you not running an ICO? And secondly, what are you doing in its place, and what do you want people to do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the reason why we're not doing an ICO is because the ICO had like many upsides. But one of them is to raise funds for actually developing and maintaining the network, which I think is not necessary to be done by public. I think it's much easier, and this will also bring us back to the question of how expensive and time-consuming is it to raise those funds. Now you can go to private investors, and you can raise it there, which is what we're doing now to fund the testnet development, and probably also later the actual maintenance of the mainnet. So that can be covered easy by private investors. They have you don't need to do that much KYC. You have you're easier on the regulations, and you're just not wasting time like marketing the ICO. That is one reason. The other reason is because you want to distribute your tokens, right, so that people can actually use it, and that can be done super naturally in Rlay just by having like starting from the people who run the testnet, give them token at the actual mainnet launch, and then just have them run it and have them mine new tokens, and then it goes from there, and they send the tokens around, and it grows naturally based on like who's interested, and you're not getting like those speculators that you usually or may have potentially in the ICO.
So very definitely usage tokens, but kind of coming out of the process rather than as part of the creation of it.
Yeah, you really want the token to be not too expensive for people who actually want to use the token and not just hold it or speculate with it, and that can be super well done if you just have natural minting.
Great. Okay, so finally, tell us a little bit about the timeline, if you can, and what you'd like people to do.
Yeah, so we're about to release our testnet. We today officially launched. Today is Tuesday.
Yeah.
So depending on when the audience hears that.
Tuesday the 19th of June.
Yes. So the testnet will be released, and we just want people to play around with it, because I think you can have a lot of really interesting implications. You can start, claiming the statements, submitting statements, and then have that displayed, potentially forever and proven to be true, which is something that is very cool. And then you can, display those in different ways. And we just want to see what the community comes up and, have people submit statements and have that, displayed to test if the incentive functions right, if there are any attack vectors. So we really just want to have them play around with it and test it out.
And one question about that, is this kind of modular? Do you build your own oracle, as it were, or is it completely public, everyone's goes in together, or can you do a mixture of both?
So everything is public, right? We just released the protocol, and that is currently running on Ethereum and OST, and may potentially run on other blockchains as well. And yeah, anyone is free to participate. Anyone can submit information, and it's incentivized via the payment function.
And it's all aggregated together in one place.
Exactly.
Okay, great. So, Michael, fascinating subject. I think we need to talk some more after the interview, but that's been really interesting. Do you want to tell people where they can find you before we close off?
Yeah. So we have I think everything's on the website. So I guess the easiest way is typing in Rlay.com, and Relay is spelled RLAY.com. So like Rlay, but we pronounce it like, Relay.
RLAY.com. Okay. Well, I've been fascinating talking to you. Very best wishes with the project. Sounds fascinating, and we'll talk some more. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
ICO Radio was brought to you by author, speaker, transparency and clarity advocate, and award-winning software innovator Barry James. Get in touch with the programme. Put yourself or someone else forward as a guest. Visit iconewsdesk.com. And if you've enjoyed the show, please leave a review. And don't forget to subscribe to get your next insights and interviews from the ICO Radio podcast.